All right, we are live with the Pharmacists in Product Livestream Q&A. My name is Brian. I will be a host for tonight, and we're going to have a special panel of pharmacists who are in product management roles. Today, we're going to be chatting with Dennis that we have here, Chris, and unfortunately, it sounds like Lauren may not be able to join us. But if you do want to see Lauren's interview, I actually did one with her just a couple weeks ago, so definitely check that out. A bit of housekeeping real quick. I have a list of questions in front of me that hopefully represent a lot of the questions that our audience may be interested in. But because this is a live stream, we certainly want to engage with all of you in the audience as well. So if you're tuning in and you have a question or comment that comes to mind during the live stream, we encourage you to leave them in the comments below. Just to get us started, for those who are already tuning in, drop us a comment. Let us know that you're here, what your name is, and perhaps even let us know where you're tuning in from. So, all right, let's get started with a bit of introductions. Chris, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. So I'm Chris. I'm currently a clinical product manager right now. Got 2 years of product experience. I just hit my 2-year anniversary on June 1st. And I really focus on the clinical parts of our product. We do a lot of work in the home infusion world, so even the dispensing part of medications and really the electronic medical record. So that's where I really kind of belong, I guess, right there is really the clinical pieces of that EMR.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the introduction. Dennis, why don't you give us a brief description of yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, and thanks for having us on, Brian. So, my name's Dennis Lim. I think Brian and I know each other pretty well now. So previously, we worked together at Mayo Clinic. I'm now a senior product manager. About 2 years of experience in product management formally, but really came from a lot of translatable experience during my time at Mayo Clinic. Currently, I'm technically outside of the pharmacy world, and so it's kind of interesting in the sense that a lot of the knowledge is transferable based on my experiences working with electronic health records, working with clinicians, clinical workflows, healthcare data. So all of that is really relevant to what I'm doing right now today, which is really building a 0-to-1 product. And so before that, I was a product manager at a company called TruePill. That was really more along the lines of my pharmacy experience. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about product, pharmacists in product, and all the issues that are related to it.
Awesome. Yeah. And again, thank you both. I mentioned it to Lauren last time. These questions are also kind of selfish because there's a lot of things I don't know about product, and I hope that you guys can help enlighten me on too as well. So thank you both for the introductions. We're going to start real quick. Shout out to Paul. Welcome to the live stream. We're going to start with the icebreaker. I have 4 icebreakers here. I'm actually going to let both Dennis and Chris choose the one that they want to answer. So Dennis, actually, why don't we start with you this time? Why don't you pick one of those icebreaker questions and share?
I think one of them was like, what's the most awkward thing you can remember or experience? And like, there's a lot of them. And I think for me, it's always around mistaken identity. And I do remember, so Brian and I kind of go back beyond just Mayo Clinic, but also University of Florida College of Pharmacy and University of Florida. Fun fact, he was my roommate undergrad freshman year. But, so there's plenty of awkwardness there. But I think the time that I remember is really like when we were studying in Blue Room, and like, so for the context, it's a really quiet study room, no talking, everyone's heads down, middle of the night, 11 o'clock, midnight. But, I kind of got distracted. And so I started throwing paper balls at someone that I thought was my classmate, Sylvia. And then like when she finally turned around, it was totally not her. And that one of many things that I remember in my mind, but that comes kind of to the forefront.
Interesting. Who was the person you threw the paper ball?
Oh, no, I think it was a dental student. So this was the area for dental med and pharmacy to study, and like I literally think it was a dental student.
That's funny. Okay, a couple of folks, other students. So it looks like it's not showing up here, but it is CGM. Oh, now it's not showing anymore. Sorry, the LinkedIn user says hello for St. Louis. Justin and Chanella, welcome to the live stream. Okay, Chris, what kind of icebreaker question are you going to answer?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick the one about living in any kind of fictional world from a book or a movie, which I would choose. I definitely think, if I could live in any kind of fictional world, big Harry Potter fan, so I would love to live in that world and go to Hogwarts a little bit. As for the reason why, I think it would be really nice to be able to use magic in some sort of way to get products along moving a little bit quicker, right? And maybe like automated QAs and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I will say York, when I was visiting the UK, there's a street there that it was inspired Diagon Alley, and it was a very cool scene. If you ever get a chance, that would feel like you're in Harry Potter. It's a pretty cool scene. Okay, so thank you both participating in the icebreaker. Let's jump into the meat of the interview, and we're going to kind of walk through some basic questions, then into very specific pharmacy and product kind of questions. So we're going to start off with some context, because I think in the audience, there's a mixture of pharmacists who are interested in product or perhaps in product already. But let's start off by describing the role you were in immediately prior to your first product manager role, just to give folks an idea of what that was like. So, Chris, why don't we actually start with you in here?
Yeah. So prior to being a clinical product manager, I was a clinical oncology pharmacist for a hospital institution. So did a lot of infusion specialty oncology medications. So did a lot of patient counseling, patient education, work with physicians, making sure that their treatment regimens were optimal, kind of reviewing those treatment regimens, and then doing the day-to-day order entry verification. So pretty great job and career as an oncology pharmacist. That was really what I did right before I came into my product world. And I actually had a little bit of overlap. So, one of the great things about going into product was I was kind of able to ease into it. So they still let me practice 1 day a week as an oncology pharmacist. And then it slowly transitioned out from there. So now I'm full-time. But it was kind of nice to kind of get a little bit of ease into product management.
That's kind of
awesome.
super. Yeah, that's super. Oh, and I should have mentioned too. Feel free to react to each other's thing. Yeah, that's super cool. I don't think I've actually heard of any other product folks that had practiced at the same time. Now I'm kind of wondering if that's typical at all. But
yeah, not sure, but I can tell you it was kind of nice having your foot in kind of both doors, right? And still really working on a product, but really being able to have that user experience level in a day-to-day workflow too. So that was nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Chris, are you working on a product that you ultimately were also the user of? Because that would be super fascinating.
No. That would be really cool, but no, I'm not.
Yeah, dog fooding, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Really good. You get to test your own products and stuff. So, okay, Dennis, your turn. Can you tell us a little bit about your role immediately prior to your first product role?
I feel like you could just do this for me.
No, I can't. I don't even know what you did.
So yeah, prior to my first product role, I was at Mayo Clinic, clinical informatics pharmacist, and responsible for the automation portfolio across kind of our enterprise-wide number of sites. And so for those who are in pharmacy today, you probably have heard of like automated dispensing cabinets like Pyxis and Omnicell, or carousels like Swisslog or Talist. So things like that. Really at the intersection of clinical practice, of our operations, and then kind of from an informatics standpoint, how to organize that data. And so it was very much a product adjacent project management type role, where you're talking about timelines, you're talking about implementations, you're talking about go live and support, and features and requirements. So it really helped me out a lot in terms of that transition, because once I got into product, it was very much beyond the terminology, which I would say is the most different. It was very similar to what I was doing at Mayo Clinic, and so really helpful in that regard.
Okay. And this question I'm going to answer myself, the next one, because Dennis here actually introduced. So I don't know if Dennis actually knows this, but I think the first time I heard of product managers was from Dennis, which is kind of interesting. It's the next question, actually. Can both of you tell us about the first moment you first learned about product management and product managers, like that they existed? Dennis, we're actually going to start back with you in this one.
Yeah, so I think this started for me when I started looking at MBA programs. And I was like, I need an advanced degree beyond my PharmD and residency. Um, I want to get MBA, but I didn't know exactly at the time like what an MBA could get me. And so I started searching LinkedIn like PharmD, MBA, and what I started seeing was actually a lot of roles around product management. And at that time, like I did not know what product management was, and it allowed me to kind of explore that area through my MBA and as through my own independent research and taking some courses to really understand what that was. So that's kind of the first time, and maybe that was around 2018, 2017-ish, something like that.
Okay, interesting. So it's through MBA program, or rather, when you were searching through MBA program. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I got this position that I am now through a mentor. Just kind of talking a lot with him, and then had some interactions with some people at the company that I work for now, and they had a role for product management open. And I'll be honest, at that point, I really didn't know what a product manager did. Had some sort of idea, but from there, took some LinkedIn courses, just like Dennis. Read some books on product management, giving me a little bit of insights there, and really kind of networked with some product managers on LinkedIn. So that's kind of how I got my foot through the door. And just like Dennis, I just recently graduated my MBA program too, and through that took a lot of courses, or as many as I could, in that marketing product world, right? So it's always kind of learning every single day, but that's kind of my first experience in getting into product management.
Super awesome. And just because you mentioned resources, is there like one or two top of mind that was like the most salient for you?
I will be honest, the best book I have read on product management to date this far is probably Continuous Discovery Habits by Teresa Torres. So if you have not read that, I would highly recommend it. Very good in really day-to-day practice. And it was actually just recommended to me a couple weeks ago, and I finished that. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff you already do as a product manager, right? But really being able to spell it out and kind of living it day to day, it's a great book.
Super cool. Well, thanks for sharing with the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is about reality versus expectations. I always think this is like kind of a fun question. So to give context here, prior to actually starting in a product management role, you probably had some ideas about what it would be like. But I'm sure there were a few things that were very different than what you expected. But also some things that you're like, oh, this is actually spot on. So can you both give us an example of, both of these examples? One where your expectation was completely different than reality, and then the other one where it was pretty much the same. So Dennis, when we start off with you.
Always going to me first. Okay, cool. Like you obviously, I told you I didn't read any of the questions beforehand, so it's all a fun surprise for me. I think the part that I'll start with the part that it wasn't what I expected, and I think like at the surface, product is, if you read Marty Kagan, like Inspired, like it's like this process, and I came in thinking like I'm a highly process oriented person. I can create like plans and roadmaps. That's like super easy. And I think what I really noticed is like a product manager is really much more about relationships and how you're able to connect people, connect ideas, and I think gain a lot of trust in the people that you're working with to even begin to start outlining processes. Like if you start process first, you're going to fail as a product manager because you haven't established a level of collaboration, and trust to even begin to do that. And so that's the part that surprised me the most. But the part that I think was kind of meeting my expectation was really around like how much decision making you get to own. I've been fortunate to have managers that have given me a reasonable amount of leeway to make my own decisions and justify it all the way up to executive levels. And so it is very much like, the very bad terminology is like you're the mini CEO of a product. And you really are. You get to make decisions to a great extent. There's some decisions that are out of your hands, but like it's really cool to be able to put ideas out there, see it executed, see it tested, get feedback on like whether that was a good idea or not. So I thought that was really cool.
No, very interesting shares. Thanks, Dennis, for that. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think going in, I didn't, one thing that I was met pretty hard early on was how much actually writing it would be. Writing requirements. I always just kind of thought, you could just talk it out and then the devs would just magically, develop it and everything would be good from there. But really getting that really iterative, really detailed, getting into the detailed process. So that was something, that was a little bit of something I didn't expect. But I think, one thing that I did expect was the decision making, right? Converse to Dennis. I always knew as a product manager, there's tons of decisions that you have to make every single day, right? On how the feature works, how it behaves, how if it doesn't go the happy way, what do you expect it to do? So I think I've always kind of had a good idea of, yeah, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions all the time. And, you might not get them right every single time. And there's going to be times where you have to go back and redo it a little bit, but that's all, part of being agile, right? And being nimble. And so those are probably the two biggest reality versus expectation examples I can give.
Nice. It's nice that you both at least mentioned decision making. So there's some common themes there. Okay, next question, and give Dennis a little bit of credit here. I think this is a good one because Dennis always talks about how you present yourself, especially if you're a pharmacist going into product, like what is the value add? So this question here is kind of inspired by that. In what ways do you believe your pharmacist background sets you apart from other product managers in the industry? And can you share an example of what that is? So I'm going to go to Chris this time. Why can't you start us off here?
Yeah, I think a pharmacist has a lot of advantages in product management, right? Especially in the healthcare technology space. As a pharmacist, you've really been able to kind of live that day-to-day life, whether you're working, in a hospital or in a managed care setting, in a retail setting, right? So you really have that user experience. So depending on what kind of product, what kind of feature you're working on, you've seen the experiences that you've had with that product, right? You've interacted with products and solutions to help guide you towards your ultimate goal of what you really wanted to do with that product and feature. So I think, from a pharmacist background, I think that innate knowledge that you've gained through pharmacy school, through real world experience, that's really going to put you at a leg up. Now, there is a lot of, user bias and confirmation bias, right, that you have to fight. So that's going to be a little bit of a disadvantage, and how you get through that, you've got to really kind of have that at the forefront of your mind all the time, right? And fight that every single day. But, as far as the innate background, that's just something that's probably a little bit harder to gain, right? So things that may come up that are more clinical in nature, like amino acid, calcium phosphate solubility curves, right? A pharmacist, may already off the bat know exactly where they want to go, how they want to do that, how it should be done, where other people may have to research that just a little bit more, right? And find out the best pathway to go. So you definitely have a little bit of, a leg up and kind of more clinical knowledge. But there's always a ton to learn too. So.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And quick shout out to Feng Lin. I just realized that my comment doesn't go to LinkedIn. So thanks for tuning in. And again, just as a quick reminder, feel free to leave questions, folks, as Dennis and Chris are going through these questions. All right, Dennis, your turn. Pharmacist background.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just shout out what Chris just said, especially around understanding your blinders based on like your history of practice. It's like, you really got to take a step back and try to be neutral. So like, I kind of like slap my own hand every time I think back, like, well, in Epic, we've done it this way. That doesn't matter, right? Certainly you can use that experience to informed decision making, maybe drive certain ideas and to a conclusion or to an experiment. But like you really do have to understand at the point, of being a product manager is the pain point of whoever you're solving for, and then what is specifically that you can do for that in that context rather than like whatever experiences you've had in the past. But I think the advantage to me, and I'll be clear though, like it is specifically in health tech roles. Like if I were a product manager in grocery at Albertsons, like I have zero advantage. I'm probably worse than your average product manager doing groceries. Like, so like let's if we're being realistic, like we're talking specifically about health tech, we're talking specifically about delivery and access to healthcare and anything along the continuum of healthcare. So like that's kind of where it is. And I think the summary of that for me is like you can shortcut so many discussions that would take a product manager that does not have health tech experience or healthcare experience, like would take them like weeks potentially. And so like if you think about time to market or time to value, time to profit, whatever that might be, if you're used in a targeted way, like you provide so much value to that organization in a way that like somebody who has to upscale to, Chris's point on amino acids, like what is even amino acids? It's so much better. But like, I think the other side of that is like, I would be a very bad product manager, even in health tech around marketing funnels. Like that's not my bread and butter. So you kind of have to know where you're valuable and like where you should probably take a step back and let somebody else like who's much more equipped to handle that.
Okay, that's your point. Good call out that we're talking specifically about pharmacists in health tech type roles too. So it's a good call out. We have some questions trickling in. We'll maybe ask one more question here, and then we're going to jump to some audience questions. This one is a good segue from the value add. So in my mind, in my very narrow mind right now, I think that there are a lot of different challenges you might face while going into product management. And just kind of curious from you two, what are some specific challenges or obstacles that you encountered when transitioning into this role? And we're going to give you back the baton there, Dennis. Can you help us out there?
Well, I'm probably the more recent one to a job search too. So I think I think I guess it sucks to say this, but like when you're out there with just a PharmD, like I think outside of pharmacy organizations, no one really knows the value of what a pharmacist does. So you're automatically discounted, right? And so like somebody would rather hire a product manager that doesn't have a PharmD, but has specific experiences that might be relevant to being a product manager and doing discovery. And so I think these are all things that pharmacists can do. It's just that like from a recruiter level, you're discounted because they don't necessarily understand that what you're capable of. They see a pharmacist in their mind as a dispensing pharmacist, not a pharmacist who has worked in oncology, not a pharmacist who has worked in informatics and managed projects and things like that. I think it's just a function of there not being an example out there or many examples out there.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on that? Mainly because you have your MBA as well. Do you feel as though your MBA has given you a leg up in this kind of situation or no?
Yeah, not gonna lie. Like I was applying to product roles the entire time I was going through MBA, my business school, and basically get like one like screener like every couple months. Finished my MBA and I was able to at least get through screening and practice on the interview process, practice on the questions and answers. So like that helped a lot. And then obviously my more recent job search with product experience plus an MBA, like obviously the doors open a lot faster. So
Okay.
there's something to it. It's anecdotal, it's an N of one, but like it's interesting kind of observation.
Okay. Chris, what about you? Tell us about some of your specific challenges or obstacles that you've encountered.
Yeah, I think, one of the most difficult parts of being a product manager and transitioning from that pharmacist mindset, as a pharmacist, we're all wired very similar, right? Like everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be compounded a certain way, the syringe pullback method, right? You've got to have the labs, you got to have the labs on time. the dosing, like everything has to be done. You're really crafting perfection a lot there. And I think, in the product world, you always iterate to provide value, right? And so it's an iterative process. And so you might start out with an MVP, a minimal viable product, which is what we call an MVP. And then you keep adding value there, right? And you don't want to go with just tons of output. You want to make it impactful value. But I think that was probably one of the most difficult parts of transitioning, right? Maybe not holding it in so long and just kind of releasing what you have. The second part, I'm going to piggyback right off Dennis, because I do think there is, I don't want to say a negative connotation, right? But I think there's a connotation to pharmacists where it's, you're dispensing pharmacists, right? And they don't really know what a pharmacist does on a day-to-day level. And they don't even know maybe that a pharmacist does have some innate background in businesses, right? Whether you're a retail pharmacist, hospital pharmacist, managed care pharmacist, I mean, you're still looking at inventory, cost of goods, right? All of that stuff still plays a huge role in product management and in the business world. But I do think, pharmacists will probably get, and hopefully that changes with the amount of pharmacists that are becoming product managers, and we can kind of set a new trend. But I'll agree with Dennis there. I think that's a pretty, I think it's common to kind of get overlooked when you're a pharmacist or just a PharmD.
Well, it is interesting to see how many pharmacists are in product. That group that I think Dennis started it, right? Is growing quite a bit. Yeah, super interesting to see. Okay, let's actually start with some of the audience questions now. We have one from YouTube. Yay. What role do you see AI playing in the industry 10 years from now? This seems like a pretty broad question. Chris, we're going to start back with you again.
Yeah, that's a loaded question right there. I think we're really just starting to scratch the surface of AI. ChatGPT's come along, and it actually came, pretty close to my last semester at Georgia Tech. And, there was a lot of policies around not using ChatGPT for assignments. But, I think AI will play a huge role in the product management industry, right? I mean, a lot of your research that you're doing, just background research, functional research, you can get a good background surface level research from ChatGPT, right? And, I've heard, and can't confirm this, that it can even kind of correct some code in that sense. So, yeah, I think it's going to play a big role. Where it ultimately ends up is probably yet to be seen. But I do believe in, in AI and playing a role in product management.
Dennis?
Yeah, I think the tricky part about this question is 10 years. I think AI in this next 1 to 2 to 3 years is going to be at most an adjunct. But in 10 years, given what we've seen from the large language model AIs that are out there, and then more niche AIs that are starting to pop up, and I always get the questions like, when can we put AI behind this feature, right? I think there's a demand for it. I think the tech is now mature enough where we can start actually putting AI into practice and getting results and refining. So 10 years is a tough time frame to answer, but I would say pretty advanced and pretty involved. I would imagine like a lot of the things that we're doing now, intentionally designing around decision trees and like all of these cases, I think AI should be able to iterate on those and surface those for us to even like begin to make decisions on, like without having to think about it. So yeah, 10 years is a long time, but I think AI will be important going from now to forever. And I think, especially, I know your audience is a lot of pharmacy students. I think if you're a pharmacy student, like you should start using ChatGPT. I won't say to the academic aspects of that. Maybe you should use it outside of your academic endeavors, but like, I see it as the next, Google, in the sense that like people who are not good at Googling are at a materially like disadvantage in society today. And I see in the future, like if you're not good at writing a prompt to ChatGPT, you're going to be at a material disadvantage in the future.
Yeah, Dennis, I wanted to ask you, sorry, Brian, I wanted to ask Dennis a question that was really good, and liked your answer on the AI. But, one of the things I think would be really helpful, and tell me if you agree, is can AI play a role in prioritization, right? Can it give us that data on the opportunity size and some competitive analysis, things like that, right? That would be, to me, that would be a huge win for product management.
Absolutely. I think we can search these things today, right? Like, I mean, in the end of the day, it's only as good as the input.
Yep.
And we can't say for sure like what the chat GPT inputs are. Like, I'm sure it's like Statistica and like a 2018 data, but like maybe you want to talk about an opportunity of something out there. So like chat GPT, please tell me the TAM of, the oncology market
Yep.
for, injectables or something like that. And maybe that's a faster way to do research, right? So
Yep.
sometimes you don't necessarily need the exact answer, you just need an approximation, and I think that's what AI is really good for. We still need to do our due diligence in actually researching, but I think directionally aligning to something that AI outputs is like really important for like time to market. Like that's really important.
Okay, and Chris, I encourage you guys and Dennis too to both interact too. So no apologies needed. And just a quick plug again. Feel free to continue asking questions from the audience. We want to engage with you all. So let's take another audience question before we jump back. Chanello, this is a nice one. Do you still keep your pharmacy licenses active? If not, how long did it take you to make the decision not to renew? I'd love to hear this. Dennis, why don't we want to hear from you?
Yeah, I've asked this as part of the product group of pharmacists, and I think I might be the minority here, but I'm technically still active now, but like I am at this point in breach of my CE requirements by the next renewal, so I probably won't be active. And I guess to the specific question, like what's the threshold and where did I decide? I think I decided after I got my current job, and that's really because of the response of the market and the interest in my skill set, where I saw that I could have a sustainable future that did not require my pharmacy license. I think if you're new coming into like product, like may not be the wisest to go ahead in and like let your license expire. But like once you have that level of experience and you feel the confidence of able to actually do your job in a competent fashion, then that's really like a decision of how much you want to spend your time on CE and opportunities that might be associated with you having a license.
Nice. Chris?
Yeah, I had 4 state licenses at one point, and I will tell you that I only have 2 remaining. And one is from my home state, South Carolina, so I have to keep that one, and the other is where I reside now, right? So I do definitely have both of those licenses active. Do I plan to keep having those licenses active? Every year renewal, it gets a little bit more of a decision. Like, do I just let it lapse or do I keep going? So I'm in it for at least another 2 years. And I think, just like Dennis said, right, it's your comfort level, right? You don't want to say it's a fallback, but if you're not as comfortable in product or maybe you didn't like it when you transitioned, then you may want to keep it, right? So you just want to make sure that you really do enjoy product management roles and that's something that you want to do long term. So yeah, just every renewal process, the percentage of renewing probably decreases for me. So
yeah, always super interesting. And so, Dennis, you were saying you're in the minority. Did it sound like the majority is keeping the licenses? Then is that what?
Yeah, and the argument on that side is like you can just do a power pack and like knock out the CEs, and it's what $100, $200, 300 some states. So it's a convincing argument, but like if I were to choose to prioritize my time, we always talk about prioritization in product. Like I would rather learn to be a better product manager, I guess. If those CEs counted, great, but they don't. So, it's just what you want to do at the time.
Okay, interesting. All right, we're gonna flip back to the audience in just a second. Let me go ahead and ask the next question first, because this is a common question. Can you describe a typical day in your life as a pharmacist turned product manager? Dennis, we're gonna have you start.
6 hours of meetings, and then like 2 hours of writing and then weekend work and evening work. That's maybe the negative way to look at it. But like those meetings are building relationships. I think number one, like getting to know the people, their motivations, what their problems are, talking about solutions, talking about options for solutions, when they can go into place, what is a minimally viable version of the solution versus what is the long-term vision. Talking about vision, I think you have to get people excited. Talking about the aspects of actual implementation, like we ran into this weird technical roadblock. What do you want to do with it, Dennis? And then understanding the options, understanding how to make the decision. So it's all meetings, but like I think overall the time is really like spent across building relationships, understanding problems, and I think documentation. So
Okay.
that was my morning for the past like I don't know weeks. So
Nice. We all love meetings. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, it doesn't differ much, and I'm glad to hear from somebody else, pharmacist turned product, that their day is pretty similar to mine. So I'm a pretty early riser. Usually get up around 4:45 in the morning. So we'll get to the office, which is just downstairs, right? So I get there pretty early, and that's where I really do a lot of writing, right? A lot of documentation. And then about 8 o'clock is where the meetings start. And a lot of those are internal meetings, right? So any kind of defects in production, any major things, that are happening, then we need to take care of. Talking with the team, what does the team need? What do they need to find more? What decisions do we need to make? And then, towards the afternoon, I really like to reserve that time towards our customers, right? And getting that feedback, kind of interviewing them, talking to them, what's their pain points, what's their trigger points, what can we do to make it better, right? Just really getting an understanding of how they're interacting with our product, what they're feeling, and, kind of working out from there, right? And then, after that, it's back to kind of drawing it out, right? And a lot of times it's either writing it, and, now you can look at opportunity solution trees and things like that. So yeah, that's, and then, just like documentation again, kind of in the evening, and then it starts all over again, right, in the morning. But I'll say, that's kind of the Monday through Friday. And then I'll leave a lot of time on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, right? And that's where heavy requirement writing comes into place, because you need that time to really focus. So it's kind of a day-to-day for me.
Super interesting. And just for some reason, it made me think about like pre-rounds. You wake up early, pre-round on your product, and then you go meeting, which is your rounds, and then like post-round stuff. Looks like you have a.
it's an interesting, like actually way to think about it. It's very similar, actually.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that's a great analogy, actually.
Yeah,
it just made me think, man. Maybe that was coming from your pharmacist past? You think about it like that.
Well, certainly early in the morning, waking up, pre-rounding is very translatable to the product world.
Yeah.
So this looks like Justin. I don't know if you're sending Chris. This is getting early messages there. Okay, let's turn back to the audience actually. So next question from the audience was actually from Paul. What RPM solutions do you find valuable to pharmacists? And Chris, we're gonna start back with you.
Yeah, I've got to honestly ask, what is an RPM solution? What is the acronym of RPM?
Might be remote patient monitoring is my guess of RPM.
Paul, anything there, Paul? Are we accurate on that?
And maybe we can circle back to Paul and let Paul give an answer here. Looks like Chanello. I believe LLMs can do that now if it's powered by your critical knowledge base and other related sources. Okay. And Fung says, if more and more pharmacists move to product management, do you think it indicates a reduction in pharmacist career qualification instead of strengthening? That's kind of interesting. What do you guys think? Dennis?
Does it indicate a reduction in pharmacy career qualification instead of strengthening it? Maybe there's two sides to this. I mean, I'm sure there's two sides to this. I think, is it product is very much a pivot away from pharmacy. But is that saying anything about pharmacy itself? I don't think so. I think it's a new opportunity that is adjacent to it in the healthcare realm. Um, in terms of like pharmacy career qualifications, I still feel like I can get back into the pharmacy world and feel fairly competent and maybe actually like introduce some new concepts from like agile and development into how pharmacy like operates at a academic institutional level. um I do think though, like, product is very much a pivot, and so I don't know that they're equal in terms of like qualifications. It is very different qualifications to be, I think, a pharmacist than it is to be a product manager, but I think there's obvious opportunities to overlap there. But I don't know that I said anything though. What did I say?
It's up to me. When we just turn over to Chris and see what Chris thinks.
Yeah, it's a good question. I wouldn't say it reduces pharmacy career qualifications. I think it expands our opportunities for pharmacists, right? Just nobody majors in product management, right? I haven't heard that that's a major yet, so I'm not sure if that's the case. I've seen some boot camps and stuff for that, right? So I think there's a lot of different products, a lot of different features, a lot of businesses, right, where they need pharmacists as product managers, right, in the healthcare tech world especially. And if you think about it, I think maybe there's some connotation where maybe they would say a pharmacist in product management left patient care, and maybe that's if we're not doing patient care, then maybe that's the reduction in qualification. But I would look at it at more of a macro level, right? And so while we might not have that day-to-day one-on-one impact with the patient, it's really a dual-sided network effect because we are helping pharmacies, hospitals, healthcare, businesses, right, reach out to end users, which may be patients, right? And so, you're helping patients more at a macro level. And so I don't really see it as a reduction in career qualifications. I would almost see it as career opportunities and extensions, right?
Yeah.
Much well better said than whatever I said.
No.
All right, we're gonna go back to Paul here. So the question again: what RPM solutions do you find valuable to pharmacists? And Paul did say remote patient monitoring. So Chris, I think we had sort of a few previously on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to be honest. As a pharmacist, I am trying to think of any remote patient monitoring systems that we used. And
Do you ever do like continuous glucose monitors? Like, is that integrated?
is that like Hemlibra and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting idea. Like, I don't know. Do you work in the realm of those things, or like remote monitoring of like lab values or things like that, like vitals? I mean,
Yeah, right now, in my pharmacy career, I'll say we did not have, especially in home infusion, right? We did not have any kind of remote patient monitoring tools. My wife's a nurse practitioner, so I know, they've used Hemlibra a lot and a lot of those remote glucose monitoring tools. So I think that is a big benefit there. And I'm not certainly discounting RPM solutions for pharmacists, right? I think it's going to grow, and I think that's a growth area. But I just don't have that personal experience with it, to be quite honest.
yeah, I think like Brian, like the perfect person to answer this would be like Timothy Onks, who's like all about the leveraging of like pharmacy technologies. I'm not working right now, and nor have I, likewise to Chris, worked with RPM technologies. But like, I remember we brought a presentation to like ASHP around the and I forget the exact name, but the inhaler that has an RFID in there that allows you to check when you actually did the inhalation. Did you do the inhalation correctly? And then report those values back to the hospital system. And I think as we become more Internet of Things interconnected with the patient, I think that is going to be an increasingly important aspect of care. I think pharmacists who can understand and aggregate data and make decisions and glean insights from that data will be better equipped to take care of patients. I think health tech solutions that aggregate large data sets like that into simple, conclusions or nuggets of insights will be important in helping clinicians like pharmacists, take care of patients. So I'm all about it. I wish I worked, more with it. I think there's maybe a future, and there are opportunities to do so, but like not my day to day.
Okay. Yeah, and when you guys started talking about it, the first person I thought of as well, quick plug for Tim over here. We're going to get back to the audience questions in just a second, because the next question I want to ask is one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited about. I'm excited about it. It's money. So how would you describe the compensation for pharmacists in product manager roles? And how do you think it compares to the average pharmacist median salary? So according to BLS in 2023, this was 128,570. So you guys can kind of open-ended kind of answer this however you will. But how does it compare? Dennis, we're gonna start with you.
More. So I think it's misleading to say that too at the same time, because it depends on your leveling. So if you're a pharmacist and you come in as a product manager, regular like associate product manager, or even like product manager one, might be less. If you come in as a senior, you might be on track. If you come in higher than that, you might get more. It also depends, whether it is a mature company, whether it's a startup, and then if it's even a mature company, whether it's a health tech company or big tech company versus like a traditional company. And so the market is not well defined, I would say, for specifically pharmacists and products. I'm not sure that we're like being, Chris, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Like, I'm not sure we're compensated to the point that includes our pharmacy knowledge. I think, at least from my perspective, we're compensated in being the product manager at the title that we have. I don't know if you have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I've got some good friends in product, right? And we talk all the time about, compensation for product and how it's really undefined, and there's a huge wide role, right? Or wide gap, from the minimum to the maximum. I think the best way to answer this question is, there's a lot of opportunity for more compensation, right? But what I will say in that is that there's a lot more hours put in, right? Where, as a pharmacist, a lot of the times you're in that 40 to 50 range. And if you're at a hospital, maybe you get the overtime after 40, right? And so you're kind of salary hourly, as they call it. Where, the product management role, it's never done, right? I mean, you got sprints every month, bi-weekly, whatever your organization, however it's done. Weekend work. I mean, your role really is just never done. It's what you're going to leave and finish today versus what you're going to leave and pick up tomorrow, right? And there's always going to be more and more. So you don't have that start and stop. Like I'm leaving everything, clocking out of the hospital, right? Or leaving, your retail pharmacy. But so I think there's an opportunity for definitely more. But just know that, there's some give and take both ways, right? In that.
It's such a key point. Like the division of the hourly pay, I think it's probably less as a pharmacist in product than you would be as just a pharmacist.
Yeah.
I'd be interested. I probably work around 60 hours a week, sometimes a little bit more than that. But like, do you feel you're in that range, Chris?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I think Justin said he loves getting texts from me at 5 a.m, or Teams messages, and the job's never done. And I think that's hard for a pharmacist mindset too, right? Like you're so used to, like you said, rounding, right? You've got your whole thing. You round in the morning, you do your things in the afternoon, and then in the evening, late afternoon, before you leave, you might look at patients again, right, on the floor or whatever, and do another quick assessment, and then you're done, right? But in product, it's never like that. I mean, you've got days where there could be a big defect, right? And you're on with development teams at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. and trying to solve it. And so, yeah, I think the best way to put it, there's a lot more room for growth, but hourly, I'm not sure, if it's in
I'm
that.
gonna push you both for a little bit more of a specific answer for the audience here. Is like, if you were to tell someone, or someone were to ask you and you had to give a number, if you're a pharmacist going into your first product management role, what might be something they might be expect? Is it like 128 plus 10K, 128 minus 10K? Like, what would be the average you would imagine? Any number.
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at it, Dennis. Interested to see what you have to say. But I would tell you that, as a pharmacist product manager, I think you would be well informed to look at that 120 plus 10 range. There's a lot of work in product management, and so I would really encourage you to look at that range, 120 plus 10 on up.
That is insightful, and I am aligned with that. I think in the end of the day, though, like, put yourself in an employer's shoes. Like, they are taking a bet on you, and so, like, as a company, the bet comes in a form of compensation. They compensate you more, they might lose more money, like, etc. So, like, I think 120 plus 10 is very reasonable for somebody who has not had a previous product experience. I think what hopefully the role then indexes on is your clinical abilities to inform, like informing the dev team, informing the design team, informing your leaders, and any other person you can influence. Because that's really where your value comes in as a first time product manager, coming out of pharmacy. Uh, as you kind of level up your product skills, then like you get a better mix. But like your first role, I think 120 plus 10 is pretty reasonable.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I think it's helpful to hear that from you both, having transitioned, just to give folks a anchor on what to expect, especially when people talk about the salaries in tech. Just wanted to anchor around something. We're going to go back to the audience in just a second. This is a nice segue because we talked about your skill sets, transitioning to product, and then now the pay. But a big question then is like, is there the job? So the next question. What are your thoughts? And there's two flavors of this question. What are your thoughts on the job market for product managers? And this is just like in general. And then the second flavor is like, what about the job market for pharmacists who are interested in product? Like, can you both shed some light on that? And Dennis, we're going to start with you.
Yeah. And I go back to earlier what I said around making sure you're targeting the right job. Even as a senior PM, I probably would not be competitive for a product manager associate job at Meta. Like, I'm just won't be. But and so that's the broader product market. I think there's due to the layoffs in tech, due to the number of people out there, like it would be very competitive for. It'll be very hard, frankly, for I think I'm speaking just for myself to be competitive for those roles. But I think when you look at the subset of health tech related jobs, there's a lot of demand for people like us, assuming they know of what they're looking for, in the sense that, like, I'm not worried. I think there's plenty of opportunities out there in this space for people who have a mix of product and healthcare experience.
That's nice. Chris?
Yeah, I think the job employment climate for healthcare tech companies and tech companies in general, right? I think people would say at an economy level, it's a little scary right now. It's a little shaky right now. You do see some layoffs happening. But for the future in product management in general, I think there's always going to be opportunities for product managers, right? I mean, every business, whether it's a service or a product, there's always a need for somebody that has the skills of a product manager, right? Because it's really just forming good relations and creating solutions to meet patients' trigger points, right? And getting them the most valuable outcome that they can have and making their job easier. So I think for pharmacists, especially, I think there's definitely there's definitely a good job market there. And I think it's just fighting that bias, right, against maybe some potential recruiters that just really don't know what a pharmacist does. And that's where, really networking, right, would probably help, and getting to know other product managers, because the basics of product management, the framework of it, it's it's not like you have to have a pharmacist degree to do it or an MBA to do it, right? Like anybody can do it. You just got to be really diligent and got to be really detailed, and really you have to have a curious personality, right? Because you want to learn more and more and more. So I think the job market's looking pretty. I think it's going to turn, and I think it will look pretty good for product management in general. And I think, especially, I think pharmacists. I see more and more in our group. This just expands, kind of daily. So I would think that the job market is looking pretty good for pharmacist product managers as well.
Super interesting. I don't think I actually expected that answer from either of you. That's very enlightening. Okay, we're going to turn it back over to the audience, and we have one from Chanello. Not to put you on the spot with your current product, but what would be your ideal dream product to work on? Looks like Chris, you look very excited, so we're going to go to you first.
Oh goodness. I'm going to rephrase that question just because some of the audience here, right? So let's see. If I couldn't work on the product that I am working on now, what would be the ideal dream product to work on? I have a very big interest in personal finance and helping others kind of achieve their financial goals. And so there's a couple of different products out there that really help enable everyday people, meet their financial and personal goals in that way. So I think if I could do anything that is not the product I'm working on right now, that's probably the avenue that I would pick, right? Because it's just a huge interest of mine, and a huge passion of mine. And, really in product, wherever you have a huge passion in, that's where you're going to succeed in.
Interesting. I think Dennis and I can talk about personal finance for a while. Dennis, what about you?
Chris just disrupted my whole thought pattern with a incredible answer where I feel like now that what I'm going to say is just boring because I think there are definitely aspects of having a passion project and taking that to where ideally you would see the next level. I think, what I was going to say was if I wasn't working on the product that I'm working on now, which I absolutely love, is really around the interconnectedness of healthcare and the healthcare data exchange. I see myself as very much a product manager that's in the technical weeds. I'm very much interested in, the exchange of data and getting insights from that data. So I want to create a product in which, we can actually have an idea of a health information exchange at a national level. And I think what that might, enable would be amazing. And I think I can do that in both the human world as well as any other healthcare related world. So I think that's kind of where my interests are. I am somewhat competent in designing user workflows and user experiences and the overall design of it, but I really do enjoy kind of the nitty gritty of a product such as that. But Chris's answer was so incredible. I need to think about that. What would I do beyond this? That'd be cool.
It's probably something with outdoors, I feel like. Okay, you can maybe marinate on that one. So we're going to move to a question. I'm very curious how you both were going to answer this one. It's very open-ended. I'm not sure how you're going to interpret it, but I'm curious to know what you're going to say. So the question is, when it comes to pharmacists and product, it's two questions. What do most people get wrong? And conversely, what do most people get right? And Dennis, we're going to start with you.
So we can, I guess, interpret this question as we see fit. I see it as what do people get wrong about pharmacists and product, and what do people get right about pharmacists and products? Is that a reasonable way to do it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, I think the perception is if you're a pharmacist and product, you're really only working on pharmacy related things, in the sense that you pharmacists dispensing, maybe a couple of medication related things. So that's really what you're working on, and that hasn't been my experience. And I think if you look through the pharmacist and product channel, like you have pharmacists working across the continuum of healthcare, whether it's insurance, whether it's automation, everything that is healthcare almost always has a medication component, and therefore like a pharmacist aspect of involvement. And so I think that's where like pharmacists do have a lot of value, and I think that's what a lot of outsiders looking in about pharmacists and product get wrong potentially. But I think people who look at us as the medication expert and want to hire a pharmacist and product, they do get it right in the sense that like we are the experts in the medication workflow. We are the experts in the healthcare workflow of how people get access to medications and to access to care in general. And so that's kind of the value for the people who think pharmacists are valuable in product of pharmacist and product, is really understanding the specific nuances of the relationship of primarily patients, but other customers, relative to access to care, delivery, and care.
Okay, very nice. Chris,
Yeah,
thoughts?
that was probably not going to be Dennis and what he said, right? But what do most people get wrong about pharmacists and products? I think from a general standpoint, we've talked a lot in this call already about, maybe pharmacists getting overlooked for product roles, right? But really how translatable the pharmacy world is and can be to other different industries, right? It's still at the end of the day, we are patient care first, but it's still a business, right? Just like everything else is a business. There's all these same business principles in pharmacy that there is in other industries. And so I think what people get wrong is that it's not translatable. And I would say that's really not true, right? I mean, you've still got end users that you're looking out with, and stress points, trigger points, things like that, any a pharmacist can detect and identify through relationship management, just as any other product management and any other product manager could, right? It's all about where their passion is. What do most people get? And one other thing about what people do get wrong about pharmacist product managers, I will say, I think when you hire a pharmacist PM, people may expect you to kind of know everything about pharmacy and medications, how they interact. And the truth is, we know a lot about it, but a lot of stuff we have to look up as well. And so, the "I will get back to you" is a very viable and very high likelihood of an answer that you may get, instead of something on the spot, right? What do most people get right about pharmacists and product management? I think we do have a strong foundational knowledge in pharmacy, in the business of pharmacy, and really good user experience. And we can really identify good user experience from bad user experience in different products and features. And we're also, I think what most people would say, I think we've got that type A personality. I think most pharmacists, have that kind of type A personality where they do want everything to be right and perfect the first time around.
Okay, very nice, very nice. I love the shares. We only have one more question on our side, but before we do, and I know we're already 4 minutes over, let's get the last two audience questions, go to the last question, and start concluding the interview. So I'm going to start here with, actually, this is just a comment. This is actually Beju, which you can't see on here. I'm looking at LinkedIn to see what this is. So Beju says, this is very true, Dennis. Medication expertise is very relevant in many healthcare tech workflows. And then this question is from Anu Deep. And she says, good evening. I'm reaching out from California. Curious to know about your work setup as a clinical product manager. Are you able to work entirely remote, or is there a combination of remote and in-person work involved in your role? So, Dennis, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, completely dependent on company, right? My previous company, I was 100% remote. They did not even have offices. And I kind of miss the office aspect of interactions. I do miss the team building aspects of seeing the other person and being able to walk by their cube or their desk and just having a quick chat. I think the friction point of like sending a Slack message is actually kind of high. Like, I don't know about you, because I don't generally just say like, "Hey, what's up, man?" On a Slack message. Like, it's intentional, and I think you miss some of that interaction without being in person. So my current company, we do have offices. I generally go in once or twice a week. One, because I think it's an opportunity to see people and talk to people, interact, network within the company, with between teams, outside of your teams, etc. So it depends. I think one of the LinkedIn users already answered, but completely dependent on the company.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, it's definitely complete. It's definitely dependent on your company. I'd say personally, though, we are all remote. Our headquarters are in Atlanta, so there's a lot of times where I'll go to the office just because you kind of want a different environment, right? You don't want to be in the same environment that you work at, you sleep at, you live at, and so there's times to kind of get away. And yeah, I would say, hopefully, I think for me, the best setup would be a little bit of a hybrid, right? 3 days in, 2 days out, or vice versa.
Okay. And yeah, this LinkedIn user is Beiju. So, we're going to wrap up with the last question. Technically, there's two, but the last one is kind of a learn more about you guys. So this last question is for the audience who are interested in product roles. What tips or advice would you give to pharmacists who are interested in pursuing careers in product management? And Chris, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think if you're a pharmacist and you're really interested in product management, I think the best thing to do is really reach out to somebody who is a pharmacist and who is a product manager. There's so many people in our group that I know would definitely spend the time in talking to others about, our roles and our career projections and trajectories, right? Of where we came from and where we are now. And really just networking through that. And I think LinkedIn's a great place to start. And then really, if you want to take that next step, read those resources, right? Read that Continuous Discovery Habit book by Teresa Torres. Take some LinkedIn courses. You can get a lot on Udemy today too, as well. So there's so many resources for you out there. And then just keep networking through LinkedIn, keep talking to recruiters, because, as a pharmacist, you can bring a lot to product management, and you do bring a lot to product management. And I promise you, more things translate in pharmacy to other industries than you think. So
nice. Dennis?
Yeah, would second the comment about networking. Shout out to Madhu, who was super instrumental and really a product mentor to me getting into this area. I asked her like, how did she transition? Because she came from informatics as well, and how does she tell her story? Which I think is the key part. How do you tell your narrative that conveys that you bring value to this opportunity for that company? And so, resources wise, LinkedIn Learning, obviously, networking, obviously. Um, at the point of when you begin to actually interview, I really found PM Diego like super, super helpful. He gives you like the very key essentials to nail some product interviews. So maybe we can drop the link there at some point. And then the other resource like I really enjoyed, which is really the inspired version of Product Manager, is Marty Kagan's books. And so he has two books, but like Inspired is like the first one you read. And so that gives you kind of what the ideal version of product management is. And then the real flavor is somewhere in between, but like it's really a goal to strive for. Once you get that and some of the interviewing skills in, like you really can start translating your experiences, your knowledge, otherwise your value, to articulate to these companies like what you bring to the table that someone who's not a pharmacist or who's not well versed in healthcare can really bring.
Nice. And then, were you referring to this?
Yes, yeah. PM Diego, he has a YouTube now, but he I think believes he started on LinkedIn. His LinkedIn
Nice.
posts are really great.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. That is nearing the end of, well, actually, this is the end of the live stream, but I'm sure the audience, and you both kind of mentioned are ready to reach out. I'm sure the audience wants to reach out to you guys to learn more, engage with different conversations. can each of you share? You guys can plug whatever you have, or like best place to reach you as well. Dennis, can you start first?
Oh, I'm not plugging anything. I don't have anything to share, but yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you're less of a LinkedIn person, wherever you're watching this, DennisonLim.com has a way to email me directly. You can see my experience and kind of some of my thoughts. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah,
No,
same
great.
thing as Dennis. You know, LinkedIn's definitely the best way to reach me. Don't have a website, but you know, definitely the LinkedIn URL. Just find me and be happy to talk to you more individually if you want to kind of learn more about product management. So definitely more than open to it.
All right. I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask to paste your LinkedIn. That's Chris's LinkedIn. All right. Well, thank you both for taking the time out, and we're like 11 minutes over now, for coming on the live stream, sharing your day, sharing your expertise. And thanks for all the audience questions. Very engaging group. Thanks for tuning in and engaging with us. So thank you both again, and we'll catch you all in the future live stream or something. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.